Think tomorrow we'll learn tomorrow night, you think?
I can hear you.
Tomorrow night, you think, or tomorrow morning?
Let me see something.
Shavua Tov, everybody.
Hi, Eric.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear me? Mario? Mario? Mario, can you hear me?
Yes, now yes.
Okay.
Yeah, hi guys.
Hi,
Hi,
Harold.
Harold. Shavua Tov.
Photo.
Okay. So we're on Chav Zayin. Tomorrow we'll learn at 7:30 p.m. The Daf, and then at 8 o'clock the Navi Shir.
Okay.
So we're on Chav Zayin Amud Aleph. Amrav Shmi Barashi. Ashkechatela Abayda v'Mazber Lebrei. Abai was explaining to his son. It says, "V'shachat es ben abakar lifnei Hashem." Shchita b'zar ksheira teaches us that a non-Kohen can do the shchita. Where did that come from? So miklal shenemar v'atau v'necha itcha tishmeru es konaschem. It says you and your sons, the Kohanim, shall protect the kahuna. Shomea ani afilu b'shchita. So I would think, therefore, that shchita, since it's also an avoda, should be done by Kohen. Talmud lomar v'shachat es ben abakar lifnei Hashem. Right? So that's clause number one. And then the krivu bnei Aaron hakohanim es adam. The hikrivu follows the shchita. And the hikrivu is the Kabbalah. So the person who stands underneath the neck of the animal to collect the blood from the shchita, so that act has to be done from a Kohen. Anything after Kabbalah, Halacha, Zrika, all the various avodot after shchita have to be done by a Kohen. But the shchita, because it says v'shachat es ben abakar lifnei Hashem, comma, v'ikrivu bnei Aaron hakohanim es adam mikabbalah ve'elech mitzvahs kahuna. Because the beginning part says v'samach yado v'shachat. The owner of the korban will do smicha. That means he'll lean on the korban, and then shchita. Now, smicha is kosher bizarre too. Every individual Jew who brought a korban, and he's the baal of that korban, he did the smicha. So smicha is kosher bizarre. So that which is connected to it, the samach yado v'shachat, leave it on shchita, sheksher bizarre. Michte. So let's see. Mikabbalah ve'elech mitzvahs kahuna. From the receiving the blood and on, only Kohanim can do it. Then why then, if we already know that from that pasuk, later on it's going to say v'nasnu bnei Aaron hakohanim es adam al mizbeach. What do I need that for? I know that everything after Kabbalah requires Kohen. So sometimes when you have a superfluous pasuk, it comes to the mamayit. The me'utei hefshet v'nituach, that stripping the hide and cutting it up does not require a Kohen. That can be done by a Zar. The Gemara says, what do you mean? Maybe the nosnu bnei Aaron is needed for its own thing. Vakati yitzritz, because salkadai techamina kivan the lava avoided the akva kaparahi. Since v'nasnu bnei Aaron hakohanim es ha'etz. The nosnu has to do with the Kohanim putting the wood on the mizbeach. V'nasnu bnei Aaron es ha'etzim al ha'etz asher al mizbeach. So the Gemara learns from that the wood has to be kohanim, but hefshet v'nituach can be done by a non-kohen. The Gemara says maybe not, because I understand you've already taught me tonight that v'shachat has been a bakar l'fnei Hashem, comma, v'kriu b'nei Aaron hakohanim sadami, kabbalah ve'elech needs kahuna. But maybe only those avodot that are ma'akev, meaning if you don't do that avoda, the korban's not kosher. So for example, if you don't do kabbalah, the korban is not valid. On the other hand, if the Kohen did not put new wood on the mizbeach, that's not ma'akev the kapora. So kivan de lav avoided ma'akev kapora, he maybe lo to buy kahuna. Maybe I would have had a havamina that the putting the wood on mizbeach also doesn't require kahuna. Kamash one the boy kahuna. Then you don't have now the words v'nostum de Aaron to be superfluous lemu'ute hefshet v'nituach, to exclude hefshet v'nituach, that's kosher bizarre. Okay, the Gemara has to search for another source. Ela mehacha, maybe from the following. It says the archu, that means barchu bnei Aaron hakohanim. The kohanim will arrange es hansochim, the pieces, es harosh v'esapodir, the head and the fats. Now, what do I need this pasuk for? Michte, you already taught me mikabolach ve'elech mitzvahs kahuna. From receiving the blood in a vessel and on requires kahuna. So this bnei Aaron hakohanim hansochim, that's also up after Kabbalah. So therefore, v'archu lamali, then the pasuk v'archu bnei Aaron hakohanim is superfluous. Says the Gemara, lemu'ute hefshet v'nituach. So maybe that's the pasuk that we're looking for to say that removing the hide of the korban and cutting it into pieces doesn't require kohen. Freit the Gemara, ve'ema lemu'ute sidur shnei gizrei eitzim. Besides the general putting wood, there were two specific logs that had to be placed on the mizbech. So maybe the placement of those logs could be done by non-kohen. That it's not the nituach v'hefshet that's being excluded, but rather from the need of a kohen. But maybe Siddur Shnei Gizrei Eitzim doesn't require kohen. No. Gemara says, Mistavra divcha de kavose memoed. Logically, we're talking about arranging the pieces, which is similar to the arranging of the wood. So the Gemara says, Adarabba, Siddur de Kavase Memayit. Maybe just the opposite. Maybe it's more logical. See, the arrangement of the korban by the Kohanim and Hefshet V'nituach has nothing to do with that. But maybe just the opposite, Siddur de Kavase Memayit. Maybe the arrangement of the pieces is similar to the arranging of the logs. Versus lo saketayta. That doesn't make sense. To Amar Mar, the kriva kohenes hakola mizbecha says the kohanim will be makr of everything. Zu hoylachos evorim lakeves. That's the moving of the pieces of the oila to the ramp. And that's also after the mitzvah of Kabbalah Sadah. To teach me that the moving of the pieces to the ramp, that requires kahuna. But maybe but maybe the schlepping of the wood to the mizbech does not require kahuna. That can be done by non-kohen. But asidur shnei gizrei eitzim boy kahuna. But those two specific logs require kahuna. And then we're back to the extra puzzle that we don't need. And maybe that the stripping of the hide and the cutting it up into pieces also could be done by non-kohen. Says the Gemara, maybe you need the archu. Maybe hechanami legufe to teach me that the arrangement of the Evorim on the Mizbeach also requires Kahuna. And you need to say that because since it's also not something that would be Ma'akev the Kapara, you would have had a Havamina to think that maybe a Zar could do it. Okay, so the Gemara is struggling to find the source pasuk for how do we know that Hefshit v'nituach is kosher bizarre. And for the Gemara, Ela v'hiktir akoin es akol. There's a final pasuk that the coin is maktir everything onto the mizbeach. Now, what is that? Lamai also. What is that coming to teach me? To say that Haktorah requires a coin, that the stripping of the hide and the cutting up does not require coin. And that requires a coin, that the schlepping of the pieces of the oilet to the ramp, that requires a coin. But but bringing wood to the mizbeach maybe doesn't require kuna. But Siddur Shnei Gzirei in boy kuhuna. Those two special logs requires kuhuna. Okay. Then you have a count. The nasnu is plural, is lekufe. That you need multiple nasnu b'nei Aaron eish lamizbeach. That this has to be done by kohanim. The archu arrangement is also plural. The minimum of that is 2. Bnei Aaron is also plural shnayim. Akohanim shnayim. Lamadlu l'tlesh ton shisha. That a ram requires 6 kohanim, like we said in our Mishnah. 5 of the kohanim carry the meat, and the innards are carried by 1. So we get the number of kohanim involved in the avoda through the drashas of these words. Amar Rav Amnuna, based on that, kasher leil Rabbi Elazar, because Habi ben Abakar Ksiv, this pasuk is written by a cow. Ben Abakar Esrim v'arba boy. If you remember, the Mishnah is told we need 24 kohanim. But v'nichale, he can answer that question. Because ala eitzim asher ala eish, asher ala mizbeach, ezeu dover shenemer bo eitzim eish mizbeach, and the Yomer zet flat. It's only an aisle that all of these things were mentioned, not by the par. And therefore, the drasha of the 6 is only for the aisle and not for the boka. So since we determined that a non-Kohen cannot arrange the wood on the Mizbeach, Rabbi Yochanan holds that if a non-Kohen does it, he's chayv misa. And how do you correct the problem if a non-Kohen did it? Ketzadu also porka. He breaks down the arrangement, and then does it again. Afraid the Gemara, what is that? If the Zar does that, what is that going to help? Ella porka Zar. The Zar undoes what he did. The Sudra Kohen, and then appropriately, the Kohen is Mesader the Eitzim. Maski for Rav Zeira. So, v'chiyesh l'cha avoida shekshera b'layla upsula bizar. The Gemara is going to show that avodot that were done at night, non-Kohanim could do it. So the Gemara asks, is there an avoida that's kosher b'night and yet a zar can't do it? And since the arrangement of the wood on the Mizbech was done early in the morning, right, way before Alois HaShachar. So it's an avodah that's kosher in the daytime. And based on this principle, a zar should be able to do it. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? V'lo? I'll show you other examples where it's an avodah that's done at night, but a zar can't do it. For example, burning the limbs and the fats at night. That's possible bizarre, yet it's done at night. And for the Gemara, Soifa avoided the Yomami. Yeah, but the Evarim Upedorim are placed on the Mizbech after they were shechted in the daytime. A Korban Ola is shechted in the daytime, can't shecht it at night. The din is at night you can keep burning the limbs. So it's sof avoda diyamamohi, but it's still considered an avoda diyom, which would not be kosher bizarre. The removal of the ash from the mizbech was also an avoda that was done way before Alos Hashach, was done at night. And yet, so you'd think that a zar would be able to do it, but the din is that Trumas Hadeshen needs a kohen. So the Gemara says it's not really an avodah at night, it's tchilas avodah diyamamehi. Trumas Hadeshen is basically the first avodah of the day. Even though it's done at night, it's mamshich into the day, because the Amar of Asi Amar of Yochanan, Kiddush Yodav l'Trumas Hadeshen, if a person washed his hands at 4 a.m. before sunrise to do Trumas Hadeshen, l'mochar, the next day, when day comes and they continue the avodah, he doesn't have to wash his hands again. Shekvar kiddush mitchila avoda, because in a sense, even though the Trumas Hadeshen is done at night, it's the beginning of the daytime avoda. So elakasha, we're back to the question: is an avoda at night that's psula bizarre? Why should the Seder Samarocha? Why should it be chayiv? So if you're going to learn a vort in the name of Rav Yochanan, this is how you have to learn it. On Rav Asi Rav Yochanan, not the marocha. Zar shesider shnei gzirei eitzim chay. We said that there was a special avoid of bringing 2 logs. Now that's an avoid of yoim. Hoil of it is yoimi. That's why a zar is chay for it. Maskif l'Ravava. So, if Shnei Gzirei Eitzim is an Avodas Hayom, so Lameatati Boy Pais, it should require its own lottery. So, Ishtamitze, he forgot Hadetanya, that which was learned in the Baraisa, that Misha Zacha B'Trumas Hadeshen, the Kohen that won the lottery for the Trumas Hadeshen, Zachar B'Sidr Marocha B'Sidr Shnei Gzirei Eitzim. The same kohen won the right to arrange the wood and to place the 2 logs. So it was already lotterized. The lottery had already been done for it. Now, based on this learning, it's seen that we asked the kasha that if Gzirei Eitzim is an avodas hayom, it should require its own pious. Does that imply lememra the avodas yom by pious, avodas lo by pious? That only avodot of the daytime require lottery, but avodot at night don't require lottery. Varei avorim u'pedorim. Avorim u'pedorim are there's a lottery for that, and yet it's done at night. Yeah, says the Gemara, but soif avoided yimami, like we said before, it's not really an independent avodah that's done at night. It's a mamshich from the avodah that starts in the daytime. And they ask the same question. Varei trumas hadeshen. It's an avodah at night, and yet there's a lottery for it. So the Gemara says, yeah, but that's mishum ma'aser shahaya. Really, Trumas Hadeshen didn't need a lottery, but because 2 kohanim were racing and one knocked the other one over, broke his leg, so it was a side issue that brought the lottery into place. Okay. Break the Gemara, lemeimer d'avodas yoim, v'shazar chayav ale misa, boy pious. So is the criteria for lottery is that it has to be daytime avoda, and then a non-coin does it, he gets misa. But ein zar chayv ale misa lo boy poyes. But if it's a kind of avoda that a non-coin is not chayv misa, that would not require lottery. V'harei shchita. Now shchita we know is kosher bizarre. Is a non-coin can do the shchita. And yet there's a pious for shchita, right? We just made a rule that if a zar is not chayv misa on it, it shouldn't require lottery. How can we have a lottery by shchita? Shiny shchita the tchilas avoidehi. It's choshuv by the kohanim, since you can't start anything without shchita. So therefore, it required a pious. Omer marzutra v'tem Ravashi. Veha anan lo yitnan achi. We said before that the bringing the two logs is an avodas hayoim. So Rav Ashi is going to say we have a Mishnah that doesn't say that. The next Mishnah is going to say like this: Amar lehem hamamuna, the guy who is in charge of announcing would say, "Tzuu uru'u im higia zman hashchita." Go outside and see whether the sun has come up. So therefore, we can do shchita. Now, they didn't say go see whether it's daylight so that we can put the logs on, right? Implying that maybe that could be done at night. The Gemara says no. Once you shecht, and it's not nighttime, and it's still nighttime, it's not daytime, you can't reverse the shchita. Shchita that's night is gonna puzzle the korban. So that it mentioned. But hadi isli takanta. Now, let's say somebody put the gizrei eitzim on at nighttime. Well, you can be misakin that. You can remove it and put it back in the daytime. So for that purpose, it wasn't mentioned by the mamuna, loktani. Now, the ikidi amri, other people learn, maski floor of zera. They learn this sugi a little differently. Is there an avoda that follows another avoda that is possible by a non-kohen? Mario, I'm going to learn a little bit kaf ches tonight to finish the parak. So tomorrow we'll have less to learn, so there won't be pressure of time.
Okay.
We're going to start kaf ches 28. Vahare evormu pedorim is a continuation. It's not in the beginning of an avodah. It's an avodah that follows other avodas. Yet we say it's puzzle bizarre. And for the Gemara, soif avodah dimimami. Yeah, but that's an avodah that really is a daytime avodah. And therefore, that's why Zar can't do it. I've already Trumas Sadeshen, which after the Trumas Sadeshen, you got removal of the ash outside. So why should a Zar be problematic with it? Because again, it's chashuv because it begins the avodah of the day. Like we learned, if a kohen washed his hands for the Trumas Hadeshen at night, when daybreak happens, he doesn't have to wash his hands again. So Elakasha, this problem of what Rav Yochanan said doesn't sound correct. A non-kohen that arranged the two logs on the mizbeach is chayiv because it's a complete and avodah that stands on its own. If it's such an important avodah, it should require its own lottery. It requires a lottery. So it was lotterized. They should do it out of its own pious. So Kedamrina, like we said before, that really didn't need a pious, because the only reason they started a pious was because they broke their legs running up the ramp. So what? L'meimer d'avodah tamah. If there's a complete avodah, the zar chayv ala misa, boy pious, but that would require lottery. But ein zar chayv ala misa. But if the zar is not chayv misa, lo boy pas shchita, that a zar does not chayv misa for doing it, and yet it has a pious. And for the Gemara, shani shchita t'chilus avodah diyamami. Shchita is choshuv that because it's the first avodah of the day. And lemeimer the avodah tama boy pious, that a complete avodah requires a lottery. Avodah sheyesh achra avodah lo boy pious. But an avodah that's not complete, meaning has other avodot that follow it, does not require a lottery. That also is one of the things that follow other avodot. And for the Gemara, so have avodah diyamami. But that's got chashivas because it's really an avodah diyam. Harei trumas sadeshen, which is a night, is also night. Mishum ma'aser shaya, that didn't require a lottery, only because the guy stabbed the guy in the heart or because he broke his leg. Go and find out if the sun came up, so we can start shechting. Yet he didn't say go look regarding the Zman Siddur Gizra Eitzim Loktani. So again, the Gemara answers that there's no riot from there that he didn't say it. He didn't say it over there because only by shechita, if he shechts at night, well, you can't reverse the shechita. The korban's going to be puzzled. So that was mentioned by the Mishnah. But by the Shnei Giz, it's not that important to mention it. Because even if it was done at night, you could remove it in the daytime and do it again. As a takana, after the takana loktani. Hadalach b'rishon, hadalach b'rishon, hadalach b'rishon. Okay. So tomorrow we'll start the new parak.
What time tomorrow?
There's Kabbalah,
What time tomorrow?
Can the guy put a pan there like Kabbalah?